Hello, loves. Welcome back to WitchyMarlaina's Ghost Adventures. I'm your host, Witchy Marlaina, and today, back into my Spookiest Objects book. And today's object is from a place I've already talked about. Well, the town I've already talked about. Today's object is the Belcourt Castle's royal chairs. I know this is kind of like a crappy picture of them, but not a lot of people take pictures of these two chairs. Okay. So back when I was doing 50 States and 500 Scariest Places to Visit book, I talked about the breakers in Newport, Rhode Island. But today, I'm going to talk about one of their neighbors. This is the Belcourt Castle. And oh my goodness, how cute it is. It was a contender before I started looking into the breakers to talk about. So I'm glad I didn't, because I'm excited to talk about this. Newport, Rhode Island was the spot of the wealthy. And it was founded, it's one of the oldest cities in the United States, founded in 1690. And it was vacation homes like the breakers, and it was just one of those things where it was on the water and it was just luxury. Oliver Belcourt was the son of a wealthy banker, and his daddy was literally one of the richest men in the world. Okay? At 24, Oliver got married to a lady named Sarah, and it just didn't work out. They got divorced within a year. Now, within that time, Oliver got an inheritance. Daddy passed away and left him $60 million. $60 million. Now, in the 1890s, where this is being held, that's unheard of. That is absolutely ridiculous money. So Oliver decided to transform this hunting lodge, and it housed all of his horses and all of that stuff, into this beautiful 50,000 square foot, 60 room, just gorgeous mansion. 3 stories. The kitchen, of course, like all the other vacation homes, was separate from the main house because they were afraid of fires, which don't get me wrong, the breakers did that too, because they were on fire and had to rebuild. So yes, the kitchen was off on the side. They have this huge mansion, and he falls in love with his best friend's ex-wife, aka Anna Vanderbilt. Now, Anna was the one who decorated this place. French Renaissance, like Louis the 13th style columns to furniture to the staircase was absolutely gorgeous, and she changed her mind about 4 times about the staircase until they told her, no, you can't change it anymore. This place took 3 years to build. And the crazy thing is that this was not their main home. They only spent about 8 weeks out of the year at Belcourt Castle. So again, thinking that this was, in the price tag on this was $3 million. Now, at that time in the 1890s, that is considered almost $80 million in today's money. 80 million. And dude had 60 million of his own. So, again, absolutely crazy. Now, we get into the haunted stuff, okay? The most haunted place in this house is the ballroom. Now, I remember talking about a ballroom being haunted, and I was like, oh my gosh, am I talking about the same place? But it's not the same place. But there was, this house had the ballroom, it had a library that had 4 secret passageways, it had Russian chandeliers that were just huge and had 13,000 crystal just glimmers on it. I was just, again, no expense. He was good. Okay. Oliver passed away, and Anna decided it was time for her to travel. Of course, she kept Belcourt Mansion, or Belcourt Castle, but she wasn't there a lot, and she decided to go into politics. She was great as an advocate for women's rights, and by 1930, she was 80, and she passed away in her French chateau in France. So the house was inherited by the nephew of Oliver. He was 19 years old. He didn't know what to do with it. He didn't have that much money to keep it up, so eventually it got passed over to Oliver's surviving brother. And by 1940, he sold it. He couldn't keep up with it either, and it just went from person to person until it became really vacant. I'll get to the ballroom here in a second, but I'm really excited to talk about this. The Tinney family purchased the Belcourt Castle in 1956 for $25,000. This $3 million mansion was purchased by the Tinneys by $25,000. Now, granted, it had a lot of work that needed to be done with it, and they spruced it up. It took about a year of renovations to get things back up to par, and they opened it up as a public museum with all of the armor and all of the artifacts from that time on display. And that's where things started hopping. Mrs. Tinney, I think her name was Margaret. She was the ones that were seeing these ghostly apparitions. She would hear footsteps, a deep gentleman's voice screaming, "Get out!" Also just screams in general. And she brought in one of those psychic mediums, and she said the psychic medium told Margaret that there's like 15 different entities that are hanging out in this house, and they love the ballroom. Okay. The ballroom has these two salt chairs. Now, back in the Louis XIII era, salt chairs were made for kings. And when dignitaries and distinguished guests came to visit the king, he would be able to give them a token of his appreciation, which was a bag of salt. And he would keep it in his throne or in his chair in a little compartment underneath. Hence the name salt chair. Salt chairs, they are very haunted, and I'll tell you why. When people sat or tried to sit in these chairs, one, they felt like they were sitting on top of something or someone. Two, they were ejected from these chairs, not just shoved out, like lifted up and projectiled across the room, to the point where it was like 4 to 7 feet away from the chair. So now the chairs are roped off. Nobody can sit in them, but people say that when they get closer to the chairs, they get a queasy feeling. They get kind of like they're being watched, and it feels like there's a presence around them. Later, the Tinneys were having a big party, and there were 70 people in the ballroom, and one of the chairs had a lightning bolt come out of it. A lightning bolt. Holy shit. And 70 people saw this go down. So it's not like this is just a coincidence. It was insane. Absolutely insane. Also in the ballroom, besides these crazy chairs, is a suit of armor that has a visible dent and scratch on its head, on the head part of the armor. And Miss Tinney says that she hears screams coming from the ballroom, and they're thinking it's because the knight that wore that armor had a lance or something that stabbed him in the eye, and he died a gruesome, brutal, lengthy death. And that's just him still screaming. Ugh. There's also a mirror that when you look at it, it looks like the room is moving. Like it just has a vibration to it. And I'm like going, oh, that's a portal. Oh, that's a portal. So then I'm like, but that's it. The Belcourt Castle chairs in Newport, Rhode Island. Again, lots of money, lots of stuff, and apparently lots of people that want to stay there, which I don't blame them because it's a beautiful house. A beautiful mansion anyway. Thank you so much for joining me on my ghost adventures. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day, and I'll talk to you later.